We're back here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois, at the United Center. Wilmer Leon here with my guest, Rear Admiral retired Mike Smith. He is the president and founder of the National Security Leaders for America. Admiral Smith, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Many would say we didn't expect that this would be the national security year that it has become. A lot of things going on out there. What do you see in the immediate future looking like?
You know, I think the immediate future, given how close the race is potentially frightening. The concept that right now Donald Trump is tied to get back to the Oval Office and what he will do to our security, what he did in his first term, if he tries to repeat any of that, given how the stakes are so high with national security right now, that's just frightening to me.
What do you see as being the three leading issues? What are as a national security expert, what were the three most concerning things that he actually did or tried to do in his term?
Well, I think without doubt, his friendship to Putin and his encouragement of Putin, you know, and not doing anything when they invaded Crimea, and then going on and saying that, you know, if NATO allies don't pay up, Putin can do whatever they want with them. Mm-hmm. I mean, so the whole concept of NATO
mm-hmm.
as an organization and a treaty that is group that has kept us safe since World War II, he will undermine. Then Ukraine itself, there's no way he won't walk away from that. So, but another national security concern that really upsets me is he's going to politicize the military.
Okay.
You know, if you take a look at Project 2025,
mm-hmm.
right in there, it talks about how 3 and 4 stars all will have to have whatever they're talking about cleared by him. The people that he'll put into power, the civilians running the Ministry of the Department of Defense, will end up doing whatever he wants. So I think it's just such a fundamental threat at home as well as abroad.
Does he confuse the concept of commander-in-chief with running the Department of Defense? Because, as I understand it, the Department of Defense is supposed to be more on the civilians, in civilian control, but as commander-in-chief, that's still not his job to run the Department of Defense. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
And I think that how he gets around that is he will put people in there that'll do whatever he says. Now, in his first term, he had some amazing guardrails, some people who were really respected. General Mattis was a hero to many people, me included.
Mm-hmm.
And so having him there as a Secretary of Defense, you knew he wasn't going to do just whatever Donald Trump said. Having General Kelly as his chief of staff, you knew that truth to power would happen. Whether then President Trump wanted to hear it, those people would tell him what they needed to hear. And if you look at the people that were in administration those last few weeks, he put in puppets. He put in people who would just say yes. And that's just frightening for what it means for the Department of Defense should he return to the Oval Office.
Where do you see the developing issues with China fitting into the forward look in terms of national security?
Well, I think that one of the things that the vice president doesn't get a lot of credit for, because people don't understand, is that in fact she has great international prowess. She's gone to the Indo-Pacific, I think it's like 4 times. She's met with over 120 leaders, so she has been there and she has taken China to task in the region
mm-hmm.
for what they're trying to do with the South China Sea. You just saw in the news today how the Chinese rammed a Philippine ship.
Mm-hmm.
We're a treaty ally with the Philippines. If they're attacked, we're required. It's not an option. We're required to come to the defense. So China is constantly provoking a major power war. And of the 2 people that could be in the Oval Office, Kamala Harris has the perspective, the calmness, and the intelligence to handle that right.
How do we square the current policy towards China as it relates to Taiwan with the One China policy?
You know, our Taiwan Relations Act says that the military must be prepared to come to the defense of Taiwan, if China tries to forcefully take it. That has always been there, even when we had the One China policy. So the idea is if the People's Republic of China and Taiwan become friends and merge together, and it's a peaceful a merging of the two entities, then that's great. No one has a problem with that. What we have a problem with is what China's doing, the intimidation, the threats, the real potential for an invasion. You know, we can't let that happen, and that's the problem with the Ukraine. You know, what Russia invading the Ukraine, and if Trump had his way, us not doing anything would be a complete invitation for China to invade Taiwan. It'd be like they didn't do anything with Ukraine when Russia did it. Why can't we take Taiwan back?
As you mentioned NATO in the first bit of this conversation as it relates to Ukraine, and the Biden administration has been involved in trying to expand NATO beyond the North Atlantic Treaty Organization into having incursion into other regions of the world. What do you think about an expansion of NATO?
Well, I don't think you're really expanding NATO by going into other areas.
Okay.
It's still all about our alliances and supporting our allies wherever they happen to be operating. But so, for example, you know, when we were attacked 9/11, and then we went into Afghanistan, NATO came with us. You know, it wasn't part of Europe. You know, it was way outside Europe, but we were attacked. They felt that they had an obligation as our treaty ally, and they came to our aid. So that's why I'm saying that people just don't understand how important NATO is. It's there for us as much as it is, you know, them wanting something from us. They are there to help us as well.
And as we look at what's happening right now in the European Union, there's a lot of dissension within Germany, within France, within Britain about defending Europe. Macron has been talking about they need their own defense force. What do you see happening with Europe as it relates to staying in NATO, and just in terms of this discussion about the EU developing its own defense mechanisms?
Well, you know, I think that the two are separate issues. That we always have the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They'll all be our treaty allies. If independently, they also want to boost their militaries so they can be involved in issues that maybe don't meet what NATO would look at. We should be all for that. We want them to have a strong defense. The more that they can do to build their defenses and make Europe even safer, that we should be encouraging that completely.
When you have the opportunity to talk right now to Vice President Harris, the soon-to-be Democratic nominee for president, what are the 2 or 3 real issues that you are going to want to be sure that she understands as it relates to future threats and as it relates to national security?
Well, I think that, first of all, anything I would tell her, I know she knows.
Okay.
You know, she is wicked smart. She spent the last decade immersed in foreign policy. You know, when she was in the Senate, she was on the Select Intelligence Committee. That's seeing the most sensitive information about what's really going on in the world. And she was in on that. And now she just spent 4 years going to all of the meetings in the White House, involved in the most sensitive discussions, participating when our country was working to develop a coalition to defend Israel from the Iranian attacks. She was part of that. You know, she's been out there in the Munich Security Conference, talking to our allies, making sure that they were there to support the Ukraine. And now we just learned, you know, with this hostage deal, that while she was at a security conference, she's talking to these foreign leaders to help facilitate this dialogue that end up getting this historic prisoner swap. Kamala Harris doesn't need any advice from me. She's ready to go. If I'm giving advice, I'm giving advice to that undecided voter that there is no choice when it comes to national security and safety of our country.
Final question. In terms of what's happening in Gaza, There are a lot of protests in terms of the United States policy supporting the genocide in Gaza, and but there's not the affirmative or the perception from those in the electorate are that the United States isn't listening to its people who want us to put an end to that genocide.
You know, I think that what Hamas did in the invasion of Israel is reprehensible and it's inexcusable. But they knew what they were doing. It's such a small area of the Gaza that it required much more finesse and surgical attacks on Hamas than I think Israel was prepared to do. One day they'll have to go back and do a hot wash and find out what their mistakes were. But you know, this murdering or all of these innocent children and families that are caught up in the conflict, you know, that's not excusable either. So we're seeing today that there's hope that this peace process might be working and we might see a ceasefire. I sure hope that happens.
Admiral Smith, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us here at Politics in Color. Folks, Wilmer Leon here. Politics in Color is where you are, coming to you live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois. Stay with us. There's a lot more in store.